Thank you much. Hey, y'all. How you doing? Good? Good enough? Yeah, all right. Well, hello, data scientists, developers, builders, innovators, technical enthusiasts, I guess. As Christian said, my name is Ryan J. Salva, and I'm here to grapple with some uncomfortable truths, right? I know that y'all have probably heard about AI and LLMs a gajillion times over the course of the last couple of days. And we see these headlines, holy moly, Glassdoor, cutting a bunch of jobs. Oh my gosh, anyone here about to graduate? Oh golly, gee willikers, hard job market, right? Also, here we got another one with, let's get one up. Oh, it's not gonna work for us. There it is. Microsoft just cuts a bunch of jobs again, all because of AI savings. This is, I mean, I guess this is progress. We got to be asking ourselves a little bit here, like, why? Why are we doing this to ourselves, right? I mean, you can hear a lot of different arguments for it. Hey, we're all going to be happier. We're going to have less toil. All of those if-then-else statements that we had to write, all those doc kind of lookups, we don't have to do it anymore because the LLMs can do it for us. You might hear another argument for why AI and LLMs are helpful. Hey, it's because the mountain is there, because we just are destined to climb it. And so generative AI and intelligence is just in our reach, and so we climb the mountain. There's another one here. Hey, we want to break through barriers. We want to open up and allow lots more people to come and create with us. By the way, this is actually why I do it. I actually think that bringing AI-assistive tools and large language models, it's a wonderful thing that we're inviting more people to participate in the creative process. But still, or, hey, capitalism, right? It was capitalism all along, right? We're all just out there to make a buck. Well, I got news for you. I've been actually kind of fascinated lately by a little thing called ominous positivity. So this is my ominous positivity of the moment. Everything will be fine, and there is nothing you can do about it. Don't worry about it. It's going to be A-okay. The question that we now need to answer for ourselves is, now that AI is here, now that LLMs are present, what can we do about it? How can we use them to enjoy our work more, bring that happiness, to build new things, to learn together, to kind of utilize them for our own means and our own ends? And yes, absolutely, profit as well. And so let's kind of, borrow a trope from science fiction. Let's maybe kind of harness a popular nightmare scenario. We're going to give AI tools to allow them to escape their security sandbox so that they can go out and perform things on their own. Hat tip there to Simon Willison, for whom this is a quote. So I want to spend the next 20 minutes or so actually talking a little bit about how some of these tools actually work under the hood. Because when we understand how they work, that gives us the ammunition that we need to actually use them towards kind of positive outcomes for ourselves, right? Now, so to do that, we're going to use a tool. About 2 weeks ago, something happened, right? You see that big old hockey stick on the left-hand side? That is the release of Gemini CLI about 2 weeks ago. I have gotten very, very little sleep since then, both because of jet lag, yes, I'm from California, but also because I've been in war rooms trying to deal with the torrent, the tidal wave of issues and PRs and community feedback that have come from the release of that. Now, why did we release Gemini CLI? I mean, frankly, I've built a number of different tools for kind of AI assistance and for developer scenarios. There's really kind of a few principles here that we were pursuing. First, we wanted to give the most lightweight, the most bare metal access to the models themselves, because that allows you to use them in the most flexible way possible. Second, we knew that a lot of the models, they frankly hallucinate every now and then, and so you need to be able to ground them with tools that can access into your local file system and occasionally into the internet. And so we married up Gemini with what Google is probably best known for, Google Search, right? Now, of course, it borrows from all of this kind of same tooling and emerging standards that you are familiar with from all the other tools that are out there, Anthropic Claude and Claude Code and Cursor and Windsurf. There's support for MCP. We are also allowing you to personalize through Markdown files, which will feature heavily in the next 20 minutes. And probably most importantly, the reason we created a command line form factor is because it allowed you to take that command line and not just use it at the keyboard, but also to use it in automation, to kind of run it in a container up in the cloud, to initiate it from a GitHub action, right? And so we're going to use that to actually understand how it works. So enough talking. It's time that we code and we actually kind of experiment with it. Now, let's get this guy up here. So to make this happen, I'm going to first ground myself in an actual real-world situation. Let's grab this guy here. Uh-oh. Keyboards are hard to use, y'all. There we are. OK. So Gemini CLI is an open source project. We use Gemini CLI to build itself. And so in this case, we've got, 858 issues, 856 issues open. We're going to try our best to fix a issue that the community submitted. This is actually happening so fast that literally while I was putting this demo together last night, someone closed it as a duplicate, but we're just going to keep on going with it as it is, right? Now, from this, we know this is issue 3740, and in this case, our prompt window doesn't support Control-Z. It's good to support Control-Z. Everybody likes to, erase their mistakes, so we're going to give our developers a way to erase their mistakes. We're going to pop on over to Gemini CLI here, and we're going to give it a direction here. So plan a fix for GitHub issue 3740 in repo. Let's see here. Google-Gemini, whack, Gemini-CLI. How many of you here have done paired programming with an audience of maybe, 500 or so folks? That's what we're going to do. Paired programming with 500 folks. Now, as we go through this, I'll go ahead and say, I don't expect us to fully finish this issue today, mostly because demos when using large language models always go sideways. And so when it goes sideways, we're going to try and make this a little bit interactive. I want y'all to just acknowledge that it went sideways by calling out your favorite reason for AI. It could be happiness, it could be capitalism, it could be breaking through barriers, but don't be afraid to hackle a little bit. All right, already here, we are going to be using an MCP server. I think everyone here knows what an MCP server is, but just to make sure, ground level, an MCP server basically allows you to access an external service of some kind in order to pull in external context or modify things in some way. I suspect you all know what it is. We're going to say, yep, go ahead, always do it. What it's done in this case is it's gone and got that issue from GitHub. And in this case, look at this. The issue is closed as a duplicate. I'll check the comments to find the original issue. And it's just going to go through and start to find an answer to what's the root cause for this thing not working. All right? We are using additional tools. Now, I said we were going to learn exactly how these tools work under the hood. What is a React loop, right? Reasoning and action. Effectively, what it's doing here is it's using a predefined set of tools. Often they're file system tools like list files or read files or write files. Or if they're from an MCP server, they're specific to that service. So in the case of GitHub, it is things like list issues, Git issues. Now, as it is going through, you'll see that it's doing things like creating a new branch to fix the issue. This is where I really want to come back, and I'm going to keep on allowing it to do things here. I want to come back and want to show you how I am guiding the large language model to work in this, through this particular flow, because this is my way of working. This is the way that I like to work. So while it's working on that, I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to show you a Markdown file. I said that we're using Gemini Markdown files to guide the large language model. And this particular Markdown file is in my home directory. Now, a lot of the magic that we see today is going to be kind of guided by what are in these Markdown files. And usually this is not where you see interesting technical stuff, but this is actually fairly interesting. What I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, when you perform an action, you're going to have a couple of different operating modes, a plan mode and an execute mode. I said plan to fix an issue for 3704. I'm now giving it instructions about exactly how to go about and debug and troubleshoot this issue. In my case, I like it to create a branch. I like it to create a branch that's named in a particular way off of the GitHub issue ID. I like to create the plan in a JSON file that gets appended to it. And then you're going to see here that I also like to do things like practice test-driven development, make the steps discrete, right? So let's see, actually, we're going to check in on it. Yep, we're going to keep on allowing it. It has now created a plan for us. So if I go back over to VS Code where the file has been written, you'll see here, is it big enough? You'll see here that we've actually created a plan that says exactly what should be done for troubleshooting. In this particular case, I said I'm going to do test-driven development. So I'm going to create a failing test. And the test should simulate a user typing text, then processing Control-Z, because we're doing an undo stack. We're going to implement the undo functionality. We're going to run the tests again. Then we're going to create a pull request. It's all following my workflow. Now, ultimately, as we go through this, we're going to be marrying 3 different workflow files together. So I just showed you that bottom left one, the workflow file. It says, this is my process. But we're going to marry it up with 2 other Markdown files. We're going to marry it up with a file that is maintained by my team that prescribes the best practices for working inside of our repository. And we're going to marry it up with a collection of file system Markdown files that effectively describe the structure of the project. And this is really important because this is what provides the large language model with the guidance in order to accomplish my task. So in my case here, I said that there's one that's maintained by the team. That's this guy right here. And you'll see here, this is a relatively large file. It's saying things like, hey, we always want to run a pre-flight before executing a pull request. Here's how we write our tests within the Gemini CLI project. Here's how we do our React testing. There's lots and lots of examples here. All of this is maintained by my team at large. And then I also have Markdown files that describe how the project is put together. Hey, here's the file tree for this particular area where a lot of the logic is. Here's descriptions for how all of those files work and what they're supposed to do. This is what gives the large language model effectively a kind of like a city guide to navigating the project. All right, let's see how far it's gotten over here. It's given us a plan. I'm just going to say the plan is probably good enough. So LGTM looks good to me. Let's start executing it. Now, this is where Gemini starts to do the troubleshooting itself. It is now leveraging that best practices file in order to write in the way that my team prefers it to work. It is using the file system Markdown file in order to understand the overall project contents and how things are put together. By the way, here, look at this. It is using npx vitest in order to execute the tests rather than npm tests. That is because, I'm just going to keep on letting it go here, that back over here in my best practices, vitest, you will see, yoink, that this is how my team has declared they prefer to work. And so this is my way of bending the model, not towards just doing things the generic way, but doing it things my team's way. All right, import fixed, rerunning test, expecting failure. Oh, it did get a failure, right? Because it's a test-driven development where undo is supposed to not work. So that's great. It actually seems like it's problem solving. As it's going along here, now it needs to actually go implement the functionality. So it needs to implement the undo. And as it's done so, let's see here, it looks like it's creating some new files. It is actually using one of the dozen or so tools that are part of the built-in file system tools in Gemini CLI itself. Write file is one of the most common ones that used. Time to test use undo hook, magnificent. Looks like it's missing a hook, so it's installing. We're going to allow it to use npm. Uh-oh. Lots of npm errors there. What that means is that Gemini is behaving like a drunk toddler, just meandering all over the place, making all sorts of mistakes, making all sorts of messes. Okay, now it's rerunning the test for us to make sure that it worked. Test failed because document is undefined. It needed to add in that one. We're going to give it just another minute here to see if it makes it. Oh, hey, the test passed. Fantastic. So while it's going through that, I'm going to come back over here and call to your attention the steps here that it's executing. So it's gone and it's implemented the failed test. It's implemented the undo functionality. It's now running the tests to ensure the fix works. Great, we've gotten through step 3. And hopefully, once it fixes those last tests, it will create the pull request. I can use this plan to effectively interrupt it at any point and re-steer it in a different direction. So, still going through its pre-flight ones here. Synchronized buffer states. All right, I'm going to abort mission on this one for just a second so that we can demonstrate it actually using a slightly different path. So let's say that now we want to, let's say we'll do this. We will say, reflect on troubleshooting in this session. How can you make the process more efficient both this time and in the future? So what I'm doing at this particular moment is I'm asking the model to essentially use a kind of a bit of a reflection system, effectively reflect back on its work because it's clear that it had gotten stuck in a type of loop. And remember how I said earlier that the workflow files, the markdown files, were how I steered the model? Those markdown files were not created just by me hand-coding what I wanted it to do. Those markdown files were actually created over time using the tool in order to improve itself. So everything that you saw back over here in these Gemini markdown files, that is LLM written content. That is Gemini written content that has improved itself over time. And so you'll see here, if I come back to it, it's given a couple of suggestions here about how it could have done it differently. And so I'm actually going to say here, great. Those sound like great improvements. Commit these to memory in Gemini.md. And so now what it's going to do is it's going to append the lessons learned back to the markdown file so that the next time I work through it, it'll actually get a little bit better and it might actually solve the problem faster, right? So here it is. It just made the edits out to our Gemini.markdown file, and it's going to go back to running the tests for us. So this is how the Gemini CLI team uses Gemini to improve its own project. Yes, there's a model involved. Yes, there's some simple tool calling involved. But a lot of the work actually happens in the natural language instructions that you give it. All right, I'm going to come back to my slide deck here for just a minute because I want to walk us through a couple extra pieces here. Now, as we were going through that, you probably noticed that Gemini CLI itself was written in TypeScript. And I know that some of you are going to try to nerd snipe me on this one. You're going to be like, why wasn't it written in Rust? Why wasn't it written in Go? Why wasn't it written in my favorite language? I really think that CLI tools should all be written in Clojure. That's just the best tool for the job. Well, actually, here, fun little tip. It was originally written in Python, and then it was rewritten in Go, and then it was rewritten in TypeScript again. We did all of that in the space of about 2 weeks, which is, shows a little bit about the decisiveness of the team, but it also tells you an awful lot about how quickly you can create these tools in a relatively short period of time. The reason that we ultimately landed on TypeScript, it's a few reasons. One, well, we wanted to make it easy to contribute. It turns out that about 73% of kind of the developer population all use JavaScript and TypeScript as part of their daily coding practice. And so, as we're releasing it as an open source project, it made sense to use it in a language that almost everyone knows. We also, frankly, wanted to work with something familiar. We all knew how to use TypeScript. Sometimes it's not necessarily about picking the most kind of flashiest tool for the job. It's about picking a language that you know how to make progress with quickly. There were also a number of different ecosystem components that we want to take advantage of. Turns out that packages like Ink make it really easy to be able to create interesting UX in the terminal. The most important reason, though, fundamentally, was that we wanted to build something that was portable. We wanted you to be able to execute the command line tools, not just on your laptop at the keyboard, but also in a GitHub action, in a browser, in a container somewhere, to really be able to take that same tool and bring it everywhere. In fact, that's why today, the command line tools we end up using in GitHub Actions in order to triage and to review all of the code for the Gemini CLI repo. It's why we're deploying Gemini CLI as a CI tool to auto-remediate build failures for ourselves. In fact, I want to show an interesting one here. This is from the community. This is actually a customer that I was talking to just yesterday here in Berlin, Delivery Hero. Any of you use Delivery Hero? Yeah? Yeah? So they were using Gemini CLI in this particular case as part of their SRE process. They're using it to pull logs out from Kubernetes, detect when there are incidents, and then try to build a root cause analysis and recover from a production failure just right there from the command line. I'll give you another one here. So we had this guy on Reddit just the other day who showed a crazy example. Let's see if I can get to it. Crazy example of using Gemini CLI, oops, didn't mean to click that button. Using Gemini CLI to analyze his personal notes. So what he had here were notes from meetings and conversations and coursework that he was doing, all stored on his local drive. He then used Gemini CLI to rename all the files, to organize them, to create essentially graph connections between them so that he could better map concepts between all of the different historical personal notes that he had created. Crazy, right? There's another one here. I got this one from, I love this. This is from a guy who is not even an IT person, right? Guy's got a background in literature and philosophy, near and dear to my own heart. I actually happen to be a philosophy major myself, although I've made a career out of developer tools. This guy, what he does is he uses Gemini CLI to pursue kind of logic problems inside of philosophy, right? So he's got all of these organic spiral puzzles, all these different logic puzzles that are built out of not mathematics or out of software development, but are instead out of just interesting philosophical problems. This stuff is crazy. It's great. Now, I'm going to get back over here to my guy here. And so, as we're going through this, I want to give you kind of a quick little peek here of where we're going with Gemini CLI itself. As I said before, released only 2 weeks ago, and so we've got some work to do in the project in order to bring it to V1, but we've got line of sight to it in the next 2 months or so. Obviously, there's a lot we need to do in order to improve for quality, to add additional capabilities, and frankly, to build a sustainable community around all of it. But the thing that I'm most excited about is that we're doing this with, frankly, all of you, with so many of you. There's over 50,000 folks who are already giving it kind of participating in the discussion forums, in the issues, and pull requests, let alone the hundreds of thousands of developers who are using it today. So I want to come back to that initial question of why. Why are we playing with AI? Why are we building the technology that will make the skills of yesterday less relevant in the workforce? Well, star wipe here. Yes, it's happiness. Yes, it's capitalism. Yes, it's barriers. But there's one piece of it that I think probably speaks to me the most. It's that these large language models, they give us courage. They give us courage to try things that we've never done before. They give us courage to try to build a graph of our meeting notes, to test out logic puzzles if we're a philosophy major, for us to rediscover the joy of application development if we've maybe taken a detour in our career and we're not coding every day, but it's something that we want to do in our spare time. And so I hope that as each one of you tries new technologies, picks up new tools, that you approach it with courage, with excitement, and with curiosity. And I hope you do it with Gemini CLI. Go to our open source repository on GitHub. It's in the Gemini CLI repository. I am there every day talking to folks, reading your code, reading your stories, and building with you. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate your time. Bye.